Hey, wake up, Mr. Freeman. Anyway, uh, I should like sit down already. Also, I didn't have any candy or anything like that. It's so overwhelming. Hey, I could have gotten a candy. I didn't. Why? We don't know. Maybe I was being clever and I decided to take care of myself. So, no candy for me. But it's too late to think about that. So, anyway, uh, hello, welcome, welcome, Mr. Salary, tired salaryman. Today, today we are to the amount of people who are tired. I hope you're well. Uh, have a wonderful day, evening, night, whatever. But yeah, uh, good, good one, good life, good life. I don't know. Uh, I like that. How are you doing? I guess fine. I, I mean, sort of. Yeah. I assume that I am fine. I mean, I am alive, so that's like good enough. But also, as I mean, I can't really justify it. I sound so fucking differently from last time. I'm fucking tired. I'm so tired. I guess what? Besides that, well, very very well. So don't worry. We are good. What's the expression? We are Gucci. So yeah, but the tiredness is the main feeling of today. What if I wanted to add something like main feeling and add tiredness there? It would be so funny, but I don't feel like doing it anyway. Good. Today, today we have a lot of things to do. The rental out, I guess. No idea. What? What's today is Friday already, man. Why does time move so fast some days? Why can't everything go a little bit slower? Why does life need to be so rapid? Uh, things keep passing. Everything happens so much. Uh, tomorrow it's Saturday. Yeah. I mean, at the least, I guess tomorrow is a rest day, and I don't know. It's not Saturday. The reality is we don't really get to have the art tomorrow even, so it's not like oh wow, it's so over. I think it's like the process. I cannot really say oh wow, it's so. I cannot do anything about it. I don't know. I feel completely depressed. So tomorrow I'm giving up on everything. No, it's like I that certainly does not rely on me. So I don't need to feel bad how that is. But yeah, tomorrow we're having the bar, so it's so over. At this point already a month of no bar, but it happens. That's that's part of. Do you have any plans? What the hell? Don't worry. Don't worry. Don't worry. Don't. I I have like a different possible paths to take. I don't have really anything planned. I don't like to be that organized, I guess. But if it were to be possible, I might try to do some activity, I guess. Uh, Physical activity is not just good for the body, but also for the mind. And certainly that allows me to distract myself. But Yeah, try to do something like that, and unavoidably also, uh, I have to study. That's like the main story. If anything happens all the time with me is I'm studying. So yeah, I will have to study. That's the main plan. I will have to keep on studying stuff, I guess. But it's no issue. It's just it's unavoidable part of this. Also, something so funny. I at this point I was considering when I said, yeah, you know what, we should try to have subtitles just in case and whatnot. I obviously wasn't expecting my PC to fucking explode when having them, but I don't know. I was aiming for that particular sector who somehow is physically incapable of understanding somebody who has any accent outside. No, not accent. This isn't a fucking accent. This is who doesn't possess the capacity to speak English in the most proper pronunciation possible. So uh, I guess it's a lost there, but at this point it's easier to say now. Yeah, you know what? I don't really want to deal with the hassle of having to turn off the subtitles and turn them on again just to avoid getting lag and whatnot. It's too complicated. So yeah, no more subtitles until the future. When the future? Anyway, uh, anything else? I don't think so. I think we are good. We are we are so we are so yeah. I I don't know. There are like always way too many things. I guess that's the reality. That's like the main issue. I don't like that there are always so many things to possibly talk about. It's so funny. It's such an interesting thing. That there are always so many directions to take. It's it's interesting when you realize maybe I really don't have enough time to talk about all the things that I want to talk about properly. But also, there is this layer of do I really have anything that I completely want to talk about tomorrow? That is something that I have repeated at this point too many times. Tomorrow, I die. How I talk about the things that I wanted to enough? How I do I feel like I accomplished as much as it would have made me feel fulfilled, or did I just distract myself with other things that maybe I am not directly saying it, but maybe they weren't that meaningful to me. And yeah, I guess sadly that's part of the reality. That means life is overly incredibly short, so there is no time to talk about all the things that one wants to talk about, implying that we have even done the proper assessment of things to realize what is it that we want to talk about. I don't know. I keep on a certain degree. I just keep being on the same loop of stuff. It's interesting to see that no matter how much I move with. Oh yeah. Do you have any plan? I have made plan studying. No matter how much studying I do, some things never change. I don't feel like the view that I possess on some stuff has really been altered. Or not in a positive way, I guess. That's that's okay, okay. That's kind of the proper starting point for something. that I have been thinking about like for the past week or so, I think. It's when was it that I had it? I probably since last week. I was okay. There is a whole process about reading stuff. You don't really get to take out the whole meaning of it, even if you're actively like I try to do. For example, when I come here and I say, yeah, I don't know what we have this book called what is it, the Mahabharata. We have to read it and we have to try what's the explanation behind this stuff. Even if you're trying to do that with everything that you read, in some cases, the real sense that you can find behind things isn't apparent at a first glance. That's a funny process that sometimes the subconscious, I guess, takes takes note of things, keeps processing things for quite a long time. So it takes a lot of itself processing to find anything new about some ideas. And I don't know, it's like a very taxing or very tiring issue that you have to stop, try to properly consider something and see if you really care about it enough, or you're just acting like you had any reason to read whatever you read. In the case of trying to analyze the context of any reading that you do, and in those moments in which you have found something, you need to process it. Okay, how much time needs to pass? It's it's completely random. It will be wonderful to have the capacity to actually be capable of actively commanding the processing of the ideas, but I don't know, I guess think subconscious, unconscious, however you wanna call it, it's still like a very messy thing in ways of we don't really possess proper understanding about how you get to fit things right into it. You don't need to be so immersed, I guess, in some stuff. You don't need to be so directly participant of some processes like this one of yeah, I can understand this stuff, but it just happens at some point you get a proper discovery of something, and in this case the point I was trying to get at, not the whole explanation of yeah, you just find yourself understanding something at a later point in your life after having heard it or watched something or read something. It happens with anything that you consume. The reality is this happened. I haven't tried to read. I did mention him for a little bit. I don't know if I mentioned him directly. I know I mentioned his book the last time I came here to read On the Heights of Despair by Emil Cioran. It was a very fun reading, that one, particularly because it has a lot of interesting ideas and whatnot. And one of the things that I did say is certainly it follows too much on the way in which philosophy is done after the appearance of Nietzsche. It has too many short ideas compiled into one big book, and this one was itself very interesting. There was something funny inside of it that I kept trying to make sense of. It's it's something about the passions, the interest, the love and the capacity of being poetic, so to speak. The human being, to comprise one of the many texts that it has, the human being is only capable of being poetic to the highest degree when it is either in periods of great distress or when it is in love. And this is very much related to the concept of drive forces. Says, yeah, I mean, I assume it's an understood idea. What is it? A mainstream idea. The driving forces. Either it is something good or something bad that makes you, in this case, that's what it was being correlated to, be capable of reaching a properly poetic state in yourself. You don't get to be poetic if you are not in any of those or being motivated by any of those driving forces. Either you have a reason to make it sound good because you are interested in saying something wonderful, so to speak, to someone else and giving them the gift of what you are saying, or either because you are being liberated by your writing, I guess, you are expressing what you cannot in any other way let out through the poetical realm. And I I kept reading that. It was very interesting because this came from a philosopher, not from a poet who was decades old, thinking about how his whole career has reached a point, and at that instant I wasn't starting to really get it, but when the idea finally came to fruition, I guess, to its final form, and realized that's why people like that seem to be so interesting. Because even in the even if it doesn't appear to be poetic, even in philosophical discussions, even in yeah, any kind of development of an idea of that sort, of a narration that is made about any concept, even in those realms, you get to be, to some degree, maybe not lyrical. You do not unlock the highest level of lyricism, so to speak, even though, particularly, Sioran has a lot of fucking complex English. I suffer a lot when I have to read that guy. I haven't been challenged to have a dictionary in the other hand in a long while, so it was fun on that end to read that guy. That's the degree of lyricalism, I guess, that the author can allow himself to have. The complexity of things that you can say, the degree of, so to speak, realist things you can say is what makes it sound good. And it was funny because you don't really consider that something truly different or in any way particular. That's the proper name. It's not something highly particular in any other direction. It's just something interesting to see and something that you might be capable of enjoying. You get to be in those emotional states. That's it. Okay. The next part was, yeah, this guy also seemed to be moved by that in a way in which you might not be capable of directly saying, yeah, yeah, I have this driving force behind me. But that's when I went back and things started to make a little bit more sense. I don't really talk about authors here. I'm not somebody who likes to dedicate a whole stream to talk about authors. the only one I did ever mention, and not even directly, like, oh yeah, yeah, this whole stream is dedicated to this one singular personality. It was also Bukowski, Charles Bukowski. Uh, that guy is also fantastic in its writings. It also has a lot of interconnections with the idea of being capable of possessing a passion and being moved by passions and whatnot. And that's at that point I started to kind of tie everything together. I was getting a little bit why things seem to make so much sense in a certain way. The issue is many of the writings nowadays that you find around in any kind of place don't really possess anything but the explanation that the person gives about the world in any kind of either philosophical or poetical development don't does not possess any true explanation about the wholeness of the world. Something that we are lacking is through ideas, through developments of objective concepts, let's say. Something that philosophy, even to this day, fails to do is to create a field of its own in which only ideas are being observed. It's wonderful to see how anything that philosophy might be capable of claiming an objective reality gets taken by any other science. We don't. Many of the things get the moment in which they are recognized as objective moves from the realm of philosophical discussion. So what is left behind is only at at one side, at least in the present era, things that are related just to the subjectivity of the person speaking. It's there is always an issue that I used to have in the past. Nowadays I can understand a little bit better. People likes to do summaries of the author at the beginning of books. It's incredibly, or it seemed to me incredibly unnecessary. You don't need to actually explain why an author is being read. You don't need to be spending 20 pages telling me why I will read the author that I already decided to read. But it's useful. It gives you some context. It allows you to get the underlying text as to why some stuff that gets said is mentioned in that same direction. It's interesting to realize that in many of the developments of what we call great thinkers, many philosophical ideas are not just empty objective points. It's just a personal take on things. It's the usage of words makes it look like we are allowing what we consider our reality, and we try to attribute to others as the objective reality the shape of more truthness. We try to struggle with the world. We try to. That's something that I still don't actually like about Foucault. It's not a struggle of power, it's the necessity for a meaning. If you can renounce to anything else that is related to, let's say, higher powers, this idea of, yeah, I, am, I believe in any sort of entity, or I believe in any sort of, I guess, mystical would be the correct word in general. Theological, I guess. If that also could serve the same purpose, any kind of explanation of that realm does not need to abide by reason. But when you enter the present day and you are questioned to try and decide the issue of, okay, I need true reason to find any justification, it becomes apparent that you're just justifying your own position through subjective explanations of the reality of a world which we cannot really get to discover. We don't. That's something that I have been thinking, and I thought it was evident enough, but it doesn't seem to be like that. Something we like to call somebody like Descartes so important. The senses are something that you cannot really have faith in, and even so, one of the issues that he had was to believe that his thinking faculty was good, because he used to have some sort of command over his thinking faculty. But the reality is, even the thinking faculty, what we used to think things itself, can fail in many ways. We do not really possess an objective explanation of the world. We just believe that we have a proper thing or two to say about this universe, I guess. We just sit around and ask ourselves, yeah, what kind of direction are we taking? What kind of goal am I fulfilling in life? What kind of master am I serving? And any kind of, I guess, question that leads to the same sort of answer. It's it's all this endless battle of, yeah. I am trying to think about how I find myself in the world, how I understand things, how am I getting to a place in which I know that what I'm doing has any sort of reason, how the logical arguments that I can construct to justify being alive are good enough to not be attacked by anything else and drive me towards a negative conclusion, let's say. And it's, I guess it's fantastic because we keep only making it more and more complex. This same sort of, yeah, everything is still just subjective argumentations about a world in which no, besides unavoidable realities, no objectiveness can be given to things like the human itself. I haven't probably found the correct word still, because I don't think it's just completely a thing that we get to be self-conscious, or to have consciousness at all, or a higher level of consciousness, I guess. We don't get to have that sort of happiness of, oh yeah, consciousness is the whole issue of this. Maybe if we were lobotomized animals once again, we could be happy somehow. I don't think that's the correct assumption. I am trying to aim towards something different. I just think it's funny to see that, yeah, we are still in the game of wants to have not. I want to be right. That's the proper way to say it. I want to be right. I do not want to be wrong about things. I want to be right about what I think of this world. So I will try my best to construct something that allows me to feel like I have a good way to move forward. It's I think it's just in that sense that's why it's so interesting to see that no wonder we are we're struggling so much. I mean, we have probably as many ideologies as there are people alive. You can find, even if they are slight, they are still alterations that remove the equalness from the idea of following the same path. We don't get to have that benefit here. Even within, and that happens even in theological or mystical, however you want to call it, or religious ideas, even in all of that sort of things, are slight alterations between individual and individual who say that they follow the same system of beliefs. Even in those cases, you can find the slight alterations. Just itself, the mental representation that you can create out of stuff allows you to have a completely different vision, even if we use the same words to describe it. That's something wonderful about how we we do not discuss the symbols that we use in daily life. Because I can say to you that I think about a good person, and we can both understand what is a good person. But if we were to try and picture it, if we were to try and bring it onto reality, the best representation of a good person, I can only match your representation of that through a verbal agreement. I can only make it look like we have a similar representation because I stop and care about what the other person might say. But if I have to completely build up the good person that I think about, then compare that good person to what someone else has constructed as a good person themselves, it might be a completely different representation or something that has so many tiny details that is not at all the same thing. That has so many different layers of stuff on itself. The same thing happens with everything else. That all the possible ideas that we have out the world are constructed in a way in which we are only struggling to make sense out of stuff. And we believe that we have reached an agreement, but I wouldn't say we are more divided than ever before. I guess there was never connection, cohesion. I guess that's that's the reality. We just like to assume that we are connected so much more, but I don't know. And anyways, trying to drive it back a little bit into what I was trying to get at, because the issue is not that we have stuff of that sort and we we say that it seems to make sense. The issue is we try to act like it is the most important thing to have around, that it is the most useful thing to have around, and I don't know. Everything is just explanations through the own senses that we have. It's complicated to truly feel like anything that any other human being can say fulfills what the person itself is, because it lacks that component of being capable of constructing something good enough. If anything, a correct explanation is one of the few objective things that we have gotten at so far is, the meaning of life cannot be given. You cannot be told that this is the meaning of life. Nor, I guess, also, you have the right to say that the meaning of life is any particular thing. Because everybody is rich. reaches different conclusions, I guess. Also, I would worry this. I want to know that my true is true. Yeah, that it actually connects to this reality in the way that reflects the reality as it exists. That's what it feels like. I mean, yeah. That's that's sort of what I guess trying trying to say on a certain level. The desire to know that you are right. Everybody wishes to be right. The different authors might call it something else. The will to power of Nietzsche, for example. You can, on a more basic level, I think it is the philosophical will to power, something like that, or the will to philosophical power. I don't. Ideological power and whatnot. The struggle to be capable of demonstrating that the reality that you portray from your own singularity is the correct one, is the struggle that everybody has. The issue is we're not really moving past that, nor we are being capable of getting anywhere besides just realizing that it exists, let's say. We have the capacity to see that, oh yeah, in the end, both you and me and everyone else is interested in having a good life. But we are still losing so much time in fighting. Oh yeah, no, I cannot believe it. You are so. How can you be doing these things that I have decided to call bad and useless? How can you be completely going against my, I wouldn't say moral system to some degree. Not to throw everything out, but probably at least moral systems are useful. Uh, I assume I assume that killing people is not good. So yeah, maybe the, the the moment in which we draw a line is if you are crossing the morals of a whole world, of a whole community, but on a more basic level, my own sensitivities. That's what gets so hard in many ways, and that was also so complicated to understand. That's that's what's missing here. That we're being so sensual about everything when in reality it's just this same, okay, let's say like this, what we like to call the inner children never really grows up. You never get to know if you have the truth about anything, no matter how much. I mean, you can convince yourself, you can just abandon the possibility of thinking. That's the best way in which you have no more issues. You just stop thinking about it. But the moment in which you return to the process of trying to understand the stuff, you're once again faced by the question, how can I know that what I am talking about is correct? How can I know that the way in which I see the world is the correct one? How can I be sure that what I am trying to say is in any way meaningful? How can I know that my actions have any kind of proper meaning in the world? How can I know that I am being the human being that I was destined to be? Any kind of question of that sort is impossible to properly answer because the whole, I guess, the whole way in which you should try to answer it cannot be done through the singularity of any person. It's, I will say it's something along the lines of, how do I know that I can avoid transforming into an elephant? So something along those lines. It's completely irrational. How can I know that I will never become, I don't know, something to be more understandable? How can I know that tomorrow I won't kill somebody? something of that sort is, to some degree, impossible to answer. You have to be honest with yourself and recognize there are way too many things that are outside of our control. And that's also what I'm trying to get at. Because up until here, you could say, "Oh wow, yeah, this is." I read Camus. I read Albert Camus and the absurd man. No, 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 no. I'm not trying to be absurd. I like his work, but I'm not trying to be absurd. I'm just trying to say there is no proper way in which you can explain anything. If you try to explain it, you're just giving it your own interpretation. The issue is we have too much of a need for answers for things that we have not really understood in a proper way. I will say it's, I guess, with a different term, we like to daydream too much. It's this fun thing of, yeah, the human being is the most important project in the world, while at the same time, any single person is completely meaningless. It, in a certain degree, not we are tiptoeing a very dangerous line. I'm not saying anything related to darker thoughts about that sort of. Okay, this took a fucking sudden turn that I wasn't expecting. Uh, give me like 1 second before I end up reaching the conclusion. The issue is, let's say like this: we like too much to attribute more meaning to what we cannot understand. This unavoidable tendency of overthinking has been transported to the final enemy, the thinking apparatus itself. When you believe that it's another dangerous conclusion, when you believe that it is good to think out the stuff and that it is good to spend a whole life just immersed in mental anguish, you start to live a dangerous life. Not, I avoided saying directly, yeah, time to completely discard that, disregard it. No, certainly, I'm still maintaining a little bit of reason of it's useful. So, at least what I care about is honesty, and what I want is people to be capable of realizing what they themselves have any kind of interest on. It's, I don't know. I will rather this. What was the quotes? Would you be willing to not exist and know that every other person in the world is happy? Yeah, man. That's more than a worthy sacrifice, you know. That's more than a worthy sacrifice in this case, because in many ways, it's just that. It's just we have transported what could have been any defeatable enemy into the mental realm, and we're just trapped inside of that boundary that is trying to picture stuff as something, trying to understand the world as something, trying to paint. That's, I guess this is the moment in which I can finally mention something that completely baffled me: the theory of everything. Not think it isn't called exactly the theory. It's more like the equation of the universe or something like that. How completely deranged have we become that we have accepted that any kind of field gets to describe the whole world. Uh, When did we forget that, yeah, the human is maybe an incredibly dangerous being? It's wonderful to see how much we are ignoring important stuff for the sake of saying, yeah, I might have the reason. I might be right. I might be correct in my statements. It's just we stopped exerting caution on what we did, on how we saw the world, let's say. And I don't know, yeah, that's that's sort of where I wanted to with this starting line. There are more deeper things to that. I I also had something a little bit different related to, I guess, being honest and whatnot, but it is complicated. Mostly, uh, if I'm going to mention honesty, because out of nowhere I found out that I was out to say something very misinterpretable. So yeah, I mean, you never you never win if you're scared of failure. So what I see as such an issue is we are too interested in trying to find an objective explanation for the whole world. At some point, everything will make sense. Is what we like to believe. It's I guess the only unifying reality between all the agnostic people is at some point everything will make sense. At some point everything will be understandable. Not the wholeness of the world, but at the very least the basic point of yeah. We will find the meaning of life. And I think it's just we are moving too far, too fast into something that is at this point not the right question. That's not the right thing to be worrying about. I I remember having I mean yeah, to some degree it's like the same thing as always. What are we actually doing if we get to sit here talking about all of these things when in the rest of the world people don't even have the time to think about it. It should be apparent to some degree. You try to study it and you don't spend that much time realizing, yeah, you wanna know something wonderful? Something like a depression, something that I have spent so much time trying to understand, isn't as impossible to deal with. The reality is, it has 1,000 different treatments. You have a million ways to try and approach it, 100 of possible actions to take in order to be capable of helping anybody who finds themselves to be depressed. The same thing happens here. The world doesn't seem to be so devoid of stuff. The issue is we just like to stay in this very place of you know, very back on. dangerous quest, in which I'm going to just sit tight and try to think about the whole world, try to experience the proper reason for why we are alive. From my subjectivity, which I seem to completely disregard, I will somehow get to explain why are we here. I will do it. No, man, it's completely pointless. It's just nothing. It's a sort of inaction of such a high level, a sophisticated way of doing nothing because you just find satisfaction in believing that you are going to achieve something. I mean, you even need to believe that the conclusion that one has reached is good enough. That there is that degree of ecstasy about doing, about thinking, let's say. It's a compromise with thinking that one cannot dispose of in any way. How can I see the world if I cannot stop thinking? How can I? What was? Who was it? Was it Picasso? The fuck said something like that? Now I remember. The issue is we live too much like grown-up people and we forget how to be kids. It's necessary whole life to relearn how to be a children. Not exactly the quote, but it's necessary to spend a whole life finding the way back into that inner children that everybody carries inside of them. To realize that, yeah, indeed, I don't need to make everything so complicated. That's why also what I try to bring up with depression, something funny that you realize when you read how it is. Yeah, there are ways to do things. The issue is, the main issue is, you allow the person to just keep being depressed. You cannot give up. You cannot say, yeah, tomorrow everything will be better. Today I can completely fucking ruin my life and do nothing. Today I can give up on everything. Tomorrow I will I will have found the energies to do what I failed completely miserably today to be. Tomorrow the world will make sense. Today I will sit here and just in anger stare at the emptiness that presents itself to me. It's the very same thing here. How can we today I will spend 1,000 hours or 1,000 minutes. I will spend my whole day trying to figure out life. Today it will be day, and if it isn't today, it will be tomorrow. Today I will just have to deal a little bit with the pain of trying to understand a little bit more. So today I will keep finding something that explains a little bit more about this reality. That's the issue, I guess. Yeah, that's my next conclusion basically. That's what I have been trying to articulate for today and a little bit of yesterday, I guess. It doesn't feel fulfilling because it doesn't really have the possibility of being fulfilling. And everything that you find is just the same thing being what is it? Veiled as something else. Meme of I find a new philosopher who seems to have understood reality. Look inside. Subjective explanation of the world. Made sound. Made to be sound objective through words. same thing with every one of them. Probably, I guess. There is something funny. I like to not call myself a philosopher. Probably also the same thing to me. Very much probably the same thing. It's part of the, the issue of being and not wanting to fit. Maybe you cannot avoid fitting in that way. But yeah, everything is subjectivity. Down to the core of reality, everything is subjectivity. You don't stop being. When you become objective, just gain a relief from your subjectivity and forget for a little bit about it. When you under the guidance of objective things, language allows too much to feel the human liberated from itself. The constructs that are the words allows the mind to forget that it is still subjected, I guess, to its own ideas, and that no matter what you do, all the ideas that you have are still just funneled into something that you can talk with others, but they are all still your ideas. But I don't know, it's complicated. I mean, is it I guess it is. It shouldn't be metaphysics, but it's something along those lines of yeah. We we have found the direction that matters the most. That did we for real? I think personally, everybody can find the thing that they like the most, but at this point, it should be expected that if anybody is to find the universal truth, there will be no questioning. It shouldn't be something that in any kind of thing, any kind of excuse will allow for other people to not get it. Let's say it's this funny on a higher level. It's this funny idea of, for example, instead of philosophy itself, not exactly what philosophy proposes, but I guess taking to its extreme. Stupid people don't get to understand the world. The philosopher also doesn't understand the world. Nobody really gets to understand something so complicated as the world. Nobody has that pleasure. nobody, nobody gets to do that. That's why something funny of the real sciences. That's why you take a very minute part. You decide on something very specific and do your best to understand that. And if it's possible, you do your best to expand on that thing. But the wholeness of the world, no, I don't think so, man. There is literally no mind that can beat what is the wholeness of the universe. We cannot even see the whole universe. We just have a visible part and not much else. So it's not so the benefit that we have right now to live in a world that is completely understandable, I guess. But yeah, that's sort of my main conclusion today. I know I'm trying to tie everything together also with what I mentioned before. That's why it's hard. I mentioned it of as a kind of passing by anecdote, not a proper thing. It's something that I don't really like to talk about. I guess I already had a bad experience talking about it once, so it's complicated to believe that I will be capable of expressing it in a way in which it's understandable. But you can only make up so many excuses about the things that you like. So yeah, um, I already mentioned that I myself don't really study philosophy. I mostly study psychology. Something that I try to focus on is depression. I don't like to. I like happy people. That's something wonderful, but I I don't see happiness as an issue. I think the only issue is yeah depression itself, and I have talked enough with humans who said something along the lines of yeah there is no epidemic of sadness or epidemic of depression or loneliness or whatever or mental illness or however you wanna frame it. No, that's just outright ignorant, but outside of the point. The reality is, instead of that same physiognomy, I think it is called, or physiognomy, what you find is always the lack of a proper reason for many people. The lack of anything that makes them feel motivated enough in common types of depression, besides the what isn't called, but everybody can understand as hormonal or chemical depression. It doesn't have that name, but that sort of depression is a completely different realm. But the quote unquote normal one is not from that, and I guess it just makes sense when you see it from there. We're all interested in trying to get a meaning, but there is no way in which you can find a meaning in the world. That's to some degree why it makes sense that you find so many people who have beliefs on other things have found the answer and to have gained the possibility of not being so affected by any kind of mental issue. This gift that is when you analyze the overall populations of different groups and you realize, yeah, the people who seem to be the happiest are those who possess a proper quote unquote higher power belief. It's just an understandable idea at that point. It's not. So what? That's like so much text. XD. Sorry. with the world like pixels on a screen. Each pixel can offer a piece of the whole image, and the image will only be obvious if enough of the pixels are displaying the correct value it needs as the part of the image it holds. That's why the individual is important. It's because it requires things, explorations of self and the world in order for just one pixel to find its value. I mean, not okay. Not in a. I might have said in. I maybe understand where you are coming from with that. I don't mean that. Oh yeah, as an individual, it doesn't have a value to exist. But the reality is, no, don't worry. Also, the reality is, the individual attributes to itself too much importance. That's what I feel like. I do not believe that any human is going to be capable of, through its own thinking faculty, find the answer. Let's say, if no matter how many hours you spend trying to get the whole picture, that's sort of. I remember once what I tried to get at with this. You just realize that everything is bigger and bigger. We're not part of just a community, we're part of a world, and out of nowhere, we're not part of a world. We're now part of what seems to be a solar system. And also, we are not part of a solar system, we are part of a galaxy, and not part of a galaxy, we are part of a universe. And maybe we are not part of just a universe, we might be part of a multiversal interconnectedness string system. And maybe that's not the end, and maybe there is always something else. It's. I wouldn't say. It's not greed, the correct term. Greed, it's boiling it down to too little, but it's this sort of, I guess, innocent desire. Maybe it's one of the only few innocent desires that we have. Okay, why is this the way it is? What's after this thing? What came before this thing? For example, something that we are still so much trying to find out. We have even found out everything from the moment in which the universe was born. We still need an answer as to why we are here. Why did the universe happen? We cannot move towards the next point. We needed to get every kind of explanation about everything. That's where the human fails. It's trying to reply a little bit more also to your metaphor. It's not that you can't get all the pixels on the screen. It's that it's more of an endless scrolling page. It never stops loading. The more things you score, the more things you find you might be capable of fitting inside of your screen, let's say. There are way too many things for anybody to be capable of understanding. And the issue is, yeah, maybe it is this. This is. There's something that I need to keep thinking about. It isn't really like that. It's just. Let's say it like this. At some point, you even end up creating a sort of predicting algorithm. You forget even that you have a screen trying to continue with that. You forget that you have a screen. You forget that you have something that has already its own rules defined, and everything out of nowhere. It's such a funny thing to see. For example, something that happens so much with things like psychology and whatnot. You forget what is the proper method to see the world, and out of nowhere you start predicting everything, and out of nowhere everything has a proper reason. Out of nowhere, anybody who is depressed has had some kind of previous trauma. Everybody who seems to be having problems in life is because they had adverse children experiences. Everybody who finds themselves having not so much luck with finding a partner in their life was because they have unresolved issues with their figure of affecting their childhood. It's meaningless to act in that way. It's the way in which the human likes to argue so much about this stuff. The incapacity to recognize in the desire for everything, the everything itself that exists, let's say, and the need for one explanation and nothing else. It's not possible to have the world just be. Everything needs to be because of something. That's what's weird, I guess. I mean, it's also obvious, unavoidable justification. It's not because it doesn't make sense. What's unavoidable conclusion? Okay, everything is just because it is. What are we talking about? You're trying to tell me that I don't have a reason to be? There is no way that's a fulfilling answer. Unavoidable. That's okay. Well, I said some time ago. So sometimes avoiding to mention the words just make it worse. Yeah, this is the moment to finally drop it. It cannot be that just being is fine. Unavoidably. Ideas about death and desires of that sort become more apparent the moment in which, oh yeah, there is no explanation for the world. But it's just that in the end, it's the realization of maybe I am struggling too much for something that isn't worth it. There are so many other things that could be good. That's that's the fun thing about it. Because life is what happens in the moment to some degree. That's one of the many sayings about life is. Life is what happens in the moment. Because you get to have so many wonderful things happening in the instant that you get to experience them. And that's the nature of the fleetingness of the whole human experience. And also, that's why what I'm still finding so much trouble articulating into all of this. That you get to know that things have an ending is satisfying. That you get to know that things find a point in which they reach a conclusion is what makes it good. Not to have a need for things to go faster, not to have an interest for reaching that ending. That's also we can try to cover it as whatever. It should be apparent enough to anybody who has lived long enough. I can only assume what happens once I reach that final point. I can only be convinced. I could. It doesn't mean that I couldn't stake my life on it, but I am just convinced. I do not possess something that every single human being is capable of understanding. I do not have a universal truth to explain what comes after this. So that's also why it's sort of pointless to say, yeah, yeah, and you know what? I have found what comes next after this. So why don't you believe on me and maybe even depart with me? No, man, that's that's like incredibly complicated. But whatever. I guess at this point, I just wanted to mention it like for a little bit. And I don't know, I feel like I have been here already for like an hour talking about is something that I wanted to briefly mention. So yeah, that was what I spent like I don't know between like the last week and mostly yesterday and today thinking about. But yeah, life life certainly is, and that's good enough, I guess. Anyway, let me let me hydrate. I haven't done it in like. Let me check. Let me actually check. Yeah, yeah. 1 hour. More than 1 hour. It's a big thing and I would choose to work from. Work through. Yeah, I mean, sometimes the issue is even so. Does it have a point? I mean, that's also the fun of it. There is. It begins with there is no point. So it's complicated to move from that. Like, the moment in which you assume that it has a point, even, you kind of forget what you're talking about. That's how I feel about it. That's that's what for example, I don't like about. I mentioned him, Albert Camus. Oh yeah, the world is absurd. Therefore, everything makes sense because the absurd man gets to give his own sense. No, man, you're sort of. Oh yeah, the contradiction is what makes life good. Everybody needs a little bit of contradiction. No, uh, we we are trying to talk about serious stuff. We are okay. The best way to say it, there are people lives on the line here. We cannot have contradictions. They might be too risky. So no contradictions, please. Thank you. Anyways, completely. Anyways, that's the main thing I wanted to talk about. Is so yeah, I am satisfied. I I think I am feeling it. So yeah, I will have to take one quick adult break. So be right back, I guess. In how long? No idea. Probably like 1 or 2 minutes. After that, we are. Well, what a nice timing. After that, we are into something else, more understandable, I assume. Probably not. I was one of them. Is what I wanted to talk about last time, and it's not one of them. The last thing that I will mention today is grammar as a social issue. So we don't deal with simple stuff here. Also, sometimes I think I hate OS design. it makes you want to click the wrong button anyway. I just saw a mosquito. Fucking. I was going to say I'm back. I saw a mosquito. I. So over. Anyway, I guess yeah, I'm back. Uh, True. Wow. So wonderful the transition button. We are so back now for real. Uh, what what was I trying to say? Yeah. I I am somebody who has issues. One of them is I lie. I said I was going to move on. Hey, I lied. I remember something important because that's. I mean, it's a completely complicated, probably more complicated than what I was talking about already. But that's the direction I was trying to take when I said something that I study in many ways is depression. That's probably, I guess, I don't know. It's bad to say favorite topic, but also, if you're not honest, it's dangerous. So something wonderful that happens in depression is you see how people are capable of convincing themselves of stuff, and in some cases, they try to convince us there are people of the same mental visions and mental schemes in order to get validation from the outside so that they don't feel as wrong nor as alone in the way in which they perceive the world. The very same thing I feel happens with many of the philosophical ideas. It's not truly something. Yeah, it's never something completely honest to say. Yeah, this philosopher is being capable of expressing everything that they have in mind. And certainly it's being a reductionist. I kind of started that with uh, something funny is there are some objective explanations that are reached through philosophy. Sadly, most of them get taken into any other science realm. The moment in which they reach a stage of full completion of a complete explanation, they disappear from philosophy into something else. But besides that, I think it's just this shared or a necessity to share something. Maybe if I say that the world is sad, that the world is pointless, and people are evil, that the human is only an animal with else in suffering. Somebody else will hear what I say and say, so true, V. But that's what I feel like. I That's also why I personally I haven't questioning myself if I really like it. I I try to read people, but I don't feel like I'm really moving anywhere. I mean, it's just a symptom of the same thing in many ways. Oh yeah, yeah. The world is so ununderstandable. It's all a struggle. It's all complicated discussions about things. It's all this method, this dialectic struggle for things. It's all in the end the same thing. Maybe if I tell you why it's bad, you will also see it as bad as I do. We don't really find a solution for it, but maybe at least we share the pain, I guess. So I don't have to deal with the emptiness that I feel inside myself so much that the moment I talk about uh, this new philosophical idea that I found, that's what it feels like most of the time. I get to call it philosophy instead of that. Just maybe a bad thought. Yeah, maybe that was like the final line there. But yeah. Also, I ended up hiding the list of things. It's so it's so incredibly over. Now I will need to go and I hate it. Anyway, okay. I have I have still the second title. Last time I ended up on a completely different tangent. This time I also went for like an hour and a half already without talking about it. So we are going to see. Maybe I fail. Maybe I just tried to talk about something and I keep failing on doing that. But let's start again with next title, next subtext. Between the sense of self and sensual observations. Thank you. Well, I mean, maybe I already talked about it. I guess you can say I mentioned that. The best way to say that I did talk about it is I started earlier with, yeah, issue is we forget sensible observations, as in through the senses, through what the senses reveal. Funny thing, the senses are not something that we should be at all relying on. Finally, one of the few issues that people has to deal with on higher levels of philosophical ideas are you truly what you picture as the reality, or is the reality that you picture something completely different from the world itself of things, in which you perceive things as your own reality? That's the issue of maybe the senses are not so reliable. Maybe the senses are not so good nor useful in any way in that sense. And sadly, people cannot really avoid it. I don't think is in any way something that we can depart with. It's just what I was sort of talking about before. I need something that anchors me into this world, answers, allows me to stay safe, to feel grounded. So if I say that what I see, that what I think is good enough, at least I have some ground under my foot. I'm not feeling like I am falling through the infiniteness of the universe, nor that I am in the complete nowhere that is uncertainty. And I don't know, it's not so bad, it's because that's the other hand, that's the other face of the coin of I get to define myself a little bit more once I believe stuff that I see, that I think I can associate myself a little bit more with what I find in this world, or the thoughts that I have that seem to be part of this world, that even if I don't even share them with anyone else, at least they are my thoughts, so I don't have to worry about their certainty, so I can say that what I think is good enough of a representation about me as anything else, and it's not so bad. It's people don't need to suffer in so many ways. It's just I don't know the old question of was it good enough in this in a real direction? Was it something fulfilling in complete honesty? It's it's risking too much being hard because what I think I am or what I think I see become too much part of what I actually am. And it's a complicated way of saying basically, yeah, we get too attached too attached with the world, and out of nowhere, our whole current world falls down, and we feel like we have lost everything that there is to us. When in reality, that's something funny. Human can literally lose everything that they have around them, and even so survive and be capable of having a completely new life, with a new meaning, so to speak, and be capable of living it. Here it happens in the same direction, or in a very sort of similar way, but it's just the risk of never recognizing that it could happen, the risk of associating too closely to something that might not be as good as we'd like to think it is at first glance. I mean, the aspect of a stuff itself, we are talking about senses, the aspect of a stuff itself is certainly not the best thing to judge by. And we can have 1,000 different examples of how we like to do that thing. Even unconsciously, we are biased towards good looks, towards what seems to be nice, what seems to be useful, what seems to be good, but unavoidably, appearance alone is not the whole meaning that we have for things. Sadly, we even coexist with a lot of horrible ideas themselves just because we liked the first appearance that they presented themselves as. Let's say. So yeah. It's just a tiny observation on that, I feel like. It's it's not so complicated to talk about, it's just it takes some time to see that indeed one gets too close to everything and starts believing too many things that not that they are directly wrong, but that might not at all be allowing oneself to move in the proper direction, let's say. And yeah, that's a complicated word. Proper direction assumes that there is a correct way, that we are taking the wrong way, what not, but one of the few things I do believe certainly is suffering is not the reason. Suffering is not the complete justifier for everything that we experience. Sadly enough, just because we have a bad time, we don't get liberated from any other responsibility. What is it? Martyrdom is not an option here. The average person doesn't have that privilege. It's just a surrender to something that most people will never really have, to say something like that. But yeah, that's that's it. I guess I yeah, I wouldn't say that much more about it particularly. Also, at this point, I don't know why I'm feeling. I mean, maybe I kind of started with that, so it's just a good time to say it again. I'm a little bit sleepy. Wow. But I wouldn't trust on my sense of sleepiness, I guess. Anyway, what? Okay, next, what? What did I try to mean by that? Oh my god. Well, finally, something that I did write down that I did forget what I was trying to mean. Why, where was I mentally that I wrote that? What? More iterations on the concept of responsibility, emptiness, and the world. What? Unavoidably, this guy writes completely insane stuff, you know? Uh, Meta commentary. Sometimes, yeah, it's hard to follow myself. Calm down and reinterpret. No, yeah, I, I am trying to do that. I have like, I just issue is that was based more iterations means that was based on something that I thought about before. Uh, Funnily enough, I constantly do a fucking tabula rasa. Uh, I just keep forgetting about stuff. Every single day that I come here, I forget about the last, I don't know, two streams I did probably. What was it again? Also, no, wait. Hello, Crespian, sorry for not saying it. I hope you're well. Also, probably. Oh, no. Before you say it, no, I'm not saying it as a good night. Uh, that's so funny. Oh wow, yeah, good night. You're telling me to sleep? No, I was just saying good night. But yeah, what was it? Good evening. Yeah, what was it? It was more iterations on the concept of responsibility, emptiness, and the world. I think I kinda remember. It was something along. I just needed. Basically, half of this was just me making up uh, text, aka speech, aka discourse, while I kept scrambling my brain to remember what I was talking about at that time. It was. I remember. We are so back. It was something about how I talked about before how there are issues with how we try to see responsibility, how we try to see things such as being empty, not having a proper understanding about what I talk about, the meaning of the world, and what is the world itself in a correlation with me. All of that is what I mentioned. I don't know, probably at this point, like 3 or 4 streams ago, probably. And this was related to how, funny enough, in many ways, all of that is not truly an issue, kind of related with what I mentioned before. It's not truly an issue of a complete lack of an answer, but rather the way in which we like to approach the question makes it almost impossible to find a fulfilling answer. The way in which we are interested in dealing with the world is not one that allows us to have an enjoyable adventure through it. It's just, in many ways, I guess at this point it's very observable or evident that I talk about subjectivity a lot. It's through the subjectivity that we possess that we believe that the correct thing is to try and define what are the ways in which we ought to be, or the way in which the world should properly act as, and nothing else. It's everything is within its own fluidity, stationary, let's say. It's an interest in having no proper mobility besides the basic grade of freedom that we can handle. That's how far we can get with the stuff that we see in the world in many cases. And it's having to compromise to that possible world of other things, that possible world of, and maybe I can I can do a good job at being responsible if I slowly, example, I can do a good job at being responsible if I slowly become more responsible over time. I don't need to deal with all of my responsibilities, which have already overwhelmed me before. I can just slowly build up a tolerance and become better at being responsible. Stuff of that sort is what makes it complicated because we cannot remove ourselves from where we are when we try to talk about how we see existence, let's say. It's the very same thing with the emptiness that one can feel, the lack of a reason and the lack of any kind of motivation is understandable, not just from the point of a justification, but from the sense of if I had to try and change, if I had to give up what I already am used to knowing in order to allow myself to experience something that is completely new, in a completely new terrain, place myself and try to see from there the same question. It is too much of a risky movement. It's it's not living a life that we could consider worth living. The act of switching over, in many cases, not because it isn't by itself, but rather, and that is in direct correlation with what I mentioned before, because we like to grow too attached to stuff. We allow it to happen too much, and we allow it to become the norm. It's better to say that, yeah, things are just the way they are, because I don't need to allow any mobility between things. It's it's that the sort of thing that I see the most, that I always find in all cases. When you give up at all the possibility of things being any different, you don't have to deal with the reality of I didn't have the answer to things. I didn't have what seems now to be more fulfilling. It's not, and in this case, I am not just talking about being wrong. That's the problem. I'm not talking about just being wrong. Admitting being wrong, admitting that we are making mistakes. It's not just that. Certainly, if you are capable of changing, it is because you realize that you needed to change. That's kind of the assumed thing. That's There is no need to destroy so much anybody's sense of self by hammering time and time again that yeah, you were wrong and you were doing what was bad. It's more related to, simply put, times playing the character that we like to be is costing more than try and make any change to be someone different. And despite how much we like what we actually have, things could be better. It's not about unavoidably. One has to admit that there needs to be a change for it to happen. But it's about understanding why. Not just, oh yeah, this what is it, this method of confessing your sins, so to speak. And that's it. You are now, brother, you have confessed what your sin is. You are free to live your life with your best sinner soul. No, man. It's more along the lines of, yeah. If we are sinners, if we make mistakes, maybe changing is what's necessary. Mistakes happen, everybody has them. Unavoidably, we experience them, but it's not so necessary to attach oneself to just that way of experiencing the world. Sometimes the comfort of the pain becomes too seducing, I will say. But yeah, that's that's sort of what I was trying to say. Just it takes time, and in many cases, we're not really willing to give it. It's it's something that I always look at with wonder in that sense. We get so attached to time itself, to the time that we believe we have, and just because of that, we become so incapable of allowing any other kind of change because it all takes time, but it also costs time to keep being in that same hurtful previous way. It's not like becoming someone new does not take time, but it's more that we are sacrificing too much. Slowly, it's this something that modernity loves so much, or modernity is the period understood between 16th and 20th century. So we don't call modernity the present. A post-modernity likes to use so much in this same concept applied to how we are so attached to micro expenditures of sorts. They don't seem to be that important. It doesn't hurt to get a 5 cent candy because it lasts for not so long and it seems to be pleasurable. The issue is having to get them dozens at a time, having to get hundreds and hundreds of them, having such a need for something of that sort that you will spend so much in the long run. And that's also what I because it's in the same line of that. Because it's forgetting out the capacity to think that oneself has. It's, oh yeah, I will surrender myself to ever finding out that I might be committing a mistake, that I might be sacrificing too much. That in the end, unavoidably, it is costing me more to keep doing bad things, to keep spending so much on this quote unquote tiny expenditure that I don't have to worry. When in the end, it's no addition to what we have, it's no extra flavor to what we get to see. It's just an annoying part of being, artful part of being. And I mean, from the proper perspective, everything is terrifying, but I wouldn't say it's worth to just live in agony in fear of in fear of the possible terror that might be to change at all. Surrendering is not the option, I guess. That's what I tried to mean. But yeah, that's it. Also, as as a proper action before taking the next line. Let me higher it. Thank you very much. Okay. Next one. Next. Completely different thing. Completely unrelated. Mental wipe. That's something funny. It would make sense why I keep having so many struggles remembering stuff. Excuse. But the reality is, I talk about so many things that are all sort of unrelated to one another that, yeah, anybody will have such a hard time handling so many things, even more if there is no connecting line between them. So, uh, that's my excuse for the. Anyway, continuing. This one occurred to me only when I wrote it down or a little bit before that, but this one occurred to me. It was very interesting because I didn't realize before writing it down, sort of. It was very funny. I was on the same line of talking about responsibilities. I was seeing something interesting that is, from a personal perspective, I don't really feel like when I am being responsible, I am doing what will be the best. In some cases, being responsible is doing the very minimum. But being responsible doesn't truly comprise the wholeness of being alive, if you want to call it something grandiose of sorts. It is just, oh yeah, I get to be at the least capable of fulfilling this task. But when I look around, when I have a proper observation at what I call my responsibilities, I don't find that all of them are just what I see at a first glance and nothing else. There are always more ways in which I could allow myself to be more responsible. There are always more things that I could be more willing to do. There are more possibilities than responsibilities themselves. There is that I realized at the moment it was like, wow, it's such a wordplay in a certain sense of I have more possibilities themselves than responsibilities. I don't have that many things that I need to do. I have so many more in a complete in a completely different level. So many more things that I could be doing. I have my list of responsibilities is so little compared to how many other great things I could be doing. And when I will say it in this way, through the analysis of the life that we have, it should not be so impossible to realize that to some degree, even if the responsibilities that we have seem to be so bad and pointless, and besides the tediousness and need for repetition itself and nothing else of the responsibilities and the uphold of the traditions that are these things that we ought to do and what's not. Besides all of that, we still get to have a lot of other things that we could be trying. It's surrendering to the comparisonness that gets created by the responsible part is so much of a lesser way of being than accepting that maybe, perhaps I get to enjoy other things besides just what I need to do every day, what I should always try to do when I am alive. This handful of things that I have around myself, this list of issues that I should resolve as soon as I can every single moment of my life is not so overwhelming to a certain degree as it is the list of possible other wonderful, entertaining things that I could also keep spending my time on, the rest of my time on. And I mean, even if I don't have, because that's also the wonder of this, even if I don't have all the time in the world to spend it on what I see as a possibility, in some cases I don't need to really be dedicating every single hour, every single second that I have left of free time to that. I can do it and just feel satisfaction that even minutes brings to my life from doing, from fulfilling one of those infinite possibilities that are offered to me every single day. In the sense of, I could always take it and try to do something with what I see, with what I find in life, or I could also abandon it and say, yeah, I don't need to worry myself about all of that. Not today. Today I am. It's. I guess it's at this point sort of apparent that there is this bridge between the responsibilities and the possibilities. Excuses always cuts down. But who knows? Excuses themselves are so many times the biggest wall that we have for so many things. It would be so much better if we didn't believe so much what we thought about things in those cases. But once again, what I started with today, thinking faculty somehow gains too much validation from everyone. So the mental pain that you create, that you inflict upon yourself, seems to be more important than the possibilities that you might gain if you were to try and do anything inside of the real world. So yeah, excuses seem to be better than doing anything. Sometimes than even being responsible. But yeah, that was so far that was the point. And now for my final message. Now for my last point of the day. Mostly because I wanna get rid of the whole list. I had this at this point like for 4 days. I should try to clean it up. So yeah, let me finish with this. Uh, Now, do it. What's the meme? Do it and do it now. Don't do it tomorrow. Do it now. So yeah, let me finish. This one I already mentioned. Once again, process of let's completely empty our minds because this is unrelated to everything else that I have mentioned so far. uh, let me tell you a joke, so that we can forget about everything else. Uh, Now this is a comic, like uh, I was. No, I won't tell you a joke. I will tell you a story. I remember something about somebody. Please, can you tell us a joke? And I wanted to do comedy. Something that I have learned. Comedy is very good. Issue is comedy is also the comedy that I like is very dark, and I tried to create something, and I found that it's complicated to say something that doesn't sound like I am going to commit very bad actions. So we don't do comedy here anymore. We don't do comedy here anymore. We comedy is a construct that we don't use here. So yeah. Anyway, that there we go. That's the joke. That's the joke and the anecdote. Two for the price of one. So whatever. Let me finish. Next line. Uh, we are back to semiotics. Grammar. Social issue. This is so funny. It was one of those titles that I was like, wow, somebody reads that and they will probably think that I am crazy. Not that I am not, but it's so funny to think about it in that way. I was trying to spend some time the other day thinking, and I found myself thinking out this thing, this grammar. I was. It all started when I was considering how, on one hand, certainly, it's funny that from a personal perspective, I always try to have a sort of good grammar when I talk and when I say anything and whatnot. Unavoidably, the verbal grammar that is used and the syntaxes that is created and whatnot for speech is different from that one used in text. But it is still important that it gets controlled and regulated under things. But I don't really have the same rules. I will say, as a normal person in many cases, as a normal language user, and it doesn't really need to be something bad that I don't have them. That's the baseline. Because the reality is, in some cases, I have seen people who use the same language that I am trying to use that seem to be native speakers who have a completely different grammar. Not not just so that's what I don't like. Not just as a funny observation, not as what happens between regions which possess different accents, intonations, and whatnot. And for example, the only word that I could think of at this time, the difference between American color and British color. It doesn't happen that it exists just as a slight difference with minimal variances in the rules utilized it was complete syntactical differences used as arguing points for some reason, as things that people get angry about, as things that allow others to. It's a dangerous word to use in most contexts because nowadays it has lost most of its meaning. But the grammatical discrimination that exists in the world, the capacity to get uppity about just the way in which we say things, that was what I was thinking about. And that was just an observation that made me, for a second, stop. I was like, why does it even happen that, yeah, if somebody were to use a more basic sort of grammar that is still understandable, that's the issue of this. Not that because they change their rules, now we cannot have a proper conversation. I don't get what they are talking about, nor they get what we are talking about here. No, it doesn't happen. That, particularly that, is not the reality. We have a more enjoyable time when, despite the differences, we can keep trying to share than when everything that is different between one another gets pointed out in that way. At that realm, even that sort of issue exists. Oh yeah. The way in which I organize words differs from yours. Language itself, that should be the most universal thing, is losing its place like that. That was something that I saw as a sort of failure. That was something that I wouldn't say robbed me of my sleep, but was concerning. Why are we even having to point it out, man? Why is it an issue? Why don't we get the pleasure of knowing that, yeah, no matter how you act, no matter what you say, as long as the message is understandable, it's fine. And it's just in this case, I don't really have a conclusion. It's just an observation of sorts. It's that's one of the what I mentioned before, sort of. That's one of the many ways in which uh, any thinker of sorts brings to you what they thought about, so that they are not alone in their discomfort anymore. Because that was weird. And now I have to sit with that weirdness. Not anymore. Not anymore by myself now, but I have to sit with that weirdness of, wow, yeah. Are we truly having issues because of how we speak? Not 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 on the real cultural level of, oh wow, you used a bad word. I cannot believe it. You used a completely bad word. No, man. I'm talking about basic stuff. The grammatical rules are enough to get angry about stuff. Truly, we lack so many issues that we have to make up something like that. What life are we living, brother? Where are we? What's what was the point? The interest. That's that was a good metaphor that I or analogy is of the Tower of Babel, in which all the languages of the world become different because they reach too high in the sky. Yeah, Uh, Funnily enough, even in the same language, differences are being created just because of the most basic disagreements. That sort of thing happens. And I don't know. Certainly, it's sort of insulting also at the same time, but it isn't that much of a completely unknown reality. That even more with something like the English language, it happens. It's literally constructed from the deceased bodies of dead languages. One of the most general languages that takes so much from so many other languages is now being plagued by these issues. I guess it seems rather pointless. I mean, there are more important things to talk about, but sometimes we spend time like that here, observing dumb stuff, I guess. Also, that's okay. That's the end of the line. Also, interesting realization. I don't write, but this is still pretty much like what I mentioned before of brief topics, brief dissertations about things. Wow. Anyway, yeah, I don't have anything else to say. I think I have. I will rather use my rights to silence. So yeah, I didn't remember the proper word. That is reaffirm. No, but yeah, I will. I spoke too much today already. And also, I am uncomfortable already with my fucking voice being shit today, so that's it. We are done. Now, big question mark. Raid, I guess, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe. What did we say? No, not really. You good? Maybe fucking. Ah! You win. Literally one comment, but you win. Literally argument. You could, but yeah. I, I don't know if they're fine now. I don't know. I think I'm pretty personally that's something I struggle with. I think that most of what I talk about is very dark in a way. I mean, very judgmental, if nothing else, in a sense of, oh yeah, the comfort of being and whatnot. Daya, Daya is still alive, yeah. We can go for Daya. I thought he had already ended. We are so back. Also, Daya have Diamond is at the end. I should check that, right? I should check that because I don't remember. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. We are so back. I will need to write CH. What? Explain what I'm talking about. What? A little quick to explain. What? What are you talking about? Okay. but but yeah, I mean that's also certainly the fun of it. I mean, there are so many things to think about. I would rather think about everything here than not think at all. It's I don't know. Like I don't talk about philosophy and the state of the stream. Yeah, okay. Makes sense. Also, are you purposely writing correctly some words or am I losing it? Anyway, uh, I say I want to write. Uh, I'm a dialectical spa. I enjoy a scarf. What the fuck? Are you dissing me? Why are you saying that? Why would you say that? Anyway, before it's too late, let me set up the raid. It's so complicated. Is it set up? Yes. Oh my god, yes. Thank you. Anyway, my message. Thanks for everything. It has been a wonderful day, a wonderful night. Thanks for being here. Thanks for sticking through the end. But no more stream, please. It got incredibly cold. I wanted to do stuff right now. Let's say like that. So yeah, have a good night. Know that I will also have one. Tell Daya we were just I don't know going crazy. That's like every single stream. So yeah, don't worry about it. Anyway, good night, good evening, good life. Have a nice life. Have a wonderful life. Have a life. And yeah, take care, everyone. Thanks for this. This was good. This was a thumbs up emoji. Thumbs up emoji out of 10. Yeah. And I still need to fucking end the stream manually. I fucking hate it. One day, I will set up something that allows me to end it automatically as I raid.